We will go ahead and call the City of Wichita Commission of Electors meeting to order. It is 5:32, and I am assuming everyone got copies of the notes from last meeting. Is that correct? And do we have a way for that? Is that on the website for people that are like tuning in virtually? Yes, Stephen? Okay,
yes.
Great. Okay. What I would like to do is hopefully everybody's read these over, and I will just ask for a motion to accept the minutes as they're presented.
I'll make that motion.
Moved and seconded. Very good. All in favor, aye. Very good. All righty.
Aye.
Okay, great. Believe that takes us to the process overview, and that's Mr. Wadle, you're up.
You bet. Thank you. Let me get to the right PowerPoint here. I'm going to share our screen so the folks joining virtually can see that. And this is just a very simple PowerPoint. Just I find that sometimes it's helpful to do this with meetings just as a trend to kind of get everyone grounded in the same dynamics. So in terms of the agenda, these are all the items that are on the agenda for tonight. In terms of the process overview, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this, really working on the different concepts for the maps. We're looking at that. We'll eventually move into a process of refinement of the maps and eventually a recommendation to the City Council, which is the goal. And throughout the process, public input. This is the schedule of events, kind of the large-scale schedule of events. And again, August 31st is kind of the goal for getting a recommendation to the City Council. And then the final goal at the end, number 7 there, is that the City Council would adopt a recommendation and pass an ordinance by December 31st. So the first meeting happened on July 12th. It was a kickoff. Unfortunately, due to some technology issues, we weren't able to have the second meeting, so appreciate you all showing up for the third, coming to the third meeting. And so July 27th, we're here, and this will be an opportunity to look at some of the initial concepts that have been submitted and to have a discussion about the census information, public input opportunities. And that's really all I've got for that one, just a quick overview on the process.
Any questions for Scott on that? If not, we will go ahead and move on to Naomi and public input opportunities. Welcome. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so basically we've got some public engagement things for you. The main ways that we're communicating about redistricting to the public, can you hear me with the mask or should I take it off? Is that okay? We have the City of Wichita webpage at wichita.gov/redistricting. The forum, public engagement platform, we have a project running there where citizens have already been weighing in on some ideas. There's a little bit of confusion with the public on what exactly redistricting is and what it means. So we're gonna try and inform them better than that. And we also have our social media platforms that we've been pointing people to the webpage, the city webpage and the forum page as well. So this is basically, I know this is like Scott was saying, kind of a simple overview, but this is what the website looks like. If you go to wichita.gov/redistricting, you'll find sort of an explanation of what redistricting is. That Charter Ordinance 173 demands that this happens every 10 years and also shows you what the current council districts are, what the populations of each district are, and what the percentage of the population targeted are. And in that you can sort of see how the districts are set up and why we need to do a little bit of redistricting this year. It also has the names of each commission of elector representatives and who appointed them. There's also links on this for public engagement, an email redistricting@wichita.gov. If the public has any questions, they can email that, and we'll get that to either the Commission of Electors or staff to answer their questions. And also just another link to forum. The, the videos of the meetings are on YouTube, but they're also archived here on this page, and the most current video will show up. So this is Forum, the public engagement platform. When you navigate to its forum.wichita.gov, and you choose the Redistricting of Wichita project, this is what you'll see there, and it's pretty similar. Just a real brief overview of what redistricting is and why we're doing it. You can see that up here there are how many participants have weighed in already. Basically, Forum is a pretty new platform, and we've only softly rolled it out to the public so far. We're trying to get people to use it as a safe place to have comment, where residents can collaborate with one another or discuss things in a more civil manner than they would on other social media platforms. And we can attach documents here as well. And we can also email people if we have updates about the process that way. There are 3 phases. So this one is open. It's almost closed. It'll close this weekend. And then it'll go through another phase. Phase 2 will be when you guys are discussing all of your maps, and we'll be able to post them here as well so that people can weigh in on them. And then the final phase will be what the Commission of Electors' recommendations are to council. And this is what it looks like when the public actually posts questions. They come up as contributions, and people can just ask a question or say their piece, and then other people can upvote them or comment on them. So this is what an actual post would look like. And I'm not going to read it to you because that's something that annoys people when you read syllabi to people in classes. But other additional outreach venues that we have, we can do media alerts, and we've done press releases on the redistricting concept. District Advisory Board newsletters are also sharing information with each of the 6 districts. And we have hopes that once you formalize your maps, that we'll do probably a live stream Q&A in case people have more specific questions about how the process works. And if you have any questions for me or suggestions for outreach, let me know. And that's it.
Yes, please.
I have a 2-component question for you.
Sure.
One, I know that there is a closure, I guess, in terms of the process for, I guess, gathering feedback. Even when that process closes, will the public still be able to weigh in with
Yes.
their thoughts in the process? And 2, for the folks who are or maybe are not familiar with the process, is the city going to push those engagement links out via the social media platforms, and maybe not just once, but on some type of a regular interval, so as folks become more engaged in the process, that they can still know that they can go and comment and put feedback on there?
Yes, we have been scheduling them on our various social media platforms, and as you have more specific things, like when you narrow down fewer maps for people to actually weigh in on specifics of, we'll probably promote that more overtly, because right now it's kind of ambiguous, and I think that people are a little bit confused. We've gotten a couple of questions that are along the lines of, does this have to do with low-income housing and things like that? People think it's maybe a social redistricting, where it's pretty purely geographical, hopefully. So we need to clarify that stuff a little bit more.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody
Any
else?
other questions for Naomi? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then I believe Mike.
Mike Holmeyer, GS Team Lead. Hopefully, all you committee members have had the opportunity to look at the dashboard that was provided to you, I believe, on Thursday. For any public who's aware of this, we're developing a dashboard right now, and right now it's still in it's in a concept phase right now. Members will be able to navigate through the scenarios itself and select whichever scenario that is up there right now. Currently, all of them are up there. The question I have to pose for the committee is, at what stage would you like this provided to the public for access to this particular application? After review of the current listing of scenarios or not? So I'll leave that for comment. Yeah, I apologize.
I'd suggest that this is an opportunity for you to see what options are available through this format. Per Mike's question, I think that's a question that is standing, that's out there, and something for you to consider as you go through looking at the maps. I don't know that we necessarily need to have the answer today, but if you do, when you want this to be available, we just need to know that. And so I think this is an opportunity for you to see how the public can interact with this and how it can receive comments, and we can share that information with you.
Yes, Tom?
My take on it would be, there's no reason not to have it available as soon as it's available to us, but that's just my 2 cents worth.
I'm in agreement. What's your input, Javen?
I agree. I mean, I think the more transparency, the more open we are, the better.
Are you in agreement with that?
I would say that in terms of the public having access to that tool, I think it would be important for us to have a definitive direction on what type of maps that we are actually going to be looking at in terms of deliberation. Because right now we have a bunch of options, and some of those options that the public, may have the opportunity to weigh in on. It may not even be a feasible direction or a course that we maybe want to go. So I guess in my opinion is, once we narrow it down to 5 or 6 maps or something of that nature where we know that that's a solid direction that we want to go, then that gives the public the opportunity to be narrowed in and say, okay, out of these 5 or these 6, one of these will be the recommendation, so let's drill down from that point, as opposed to having 12 and maybe folks not utilizing their time as efficiently.
Well, that's a good suggestion. Are you guys?
My only concern with that is I kind of want the input of the community to tell us where to go instead of us telling the community where to go. That's kind of where I'm shy on waiting until we narrow it down further, just because I want to hear, maybe they're wanting to go in a whole different direction than what I'm envisioning or what the majority of us are envisioning. And I think, overall, we're doing this for everybody.
Right.
We could get.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I'd echo that too, and that, even though there's so many of these maps and we're going to whittle them down and alter them as we go forward, even if it's just one Wichitan who looks at these and sees something and makes a suggestion that one of us might not have thought of, that's of value to the committee, and is also important for transparency and may give a better understanding of what we're actually doing based on some of the comments on forum on what the scope is, seeing what even these initial scenarios may be.
Right.
And as I remember, when I looked at that portal, I think there were 9 interactions so far or something like that. There wasn't a whole lot, so I don't anticipate thousands of. I remember when we were considering the Uber bill at the State House, it crashed the State House's servers. I doubt we're going to get that kind of input. I don't anticipate hundreds of thousands of responses. So.
Well, and that's why I ask you guys, if you're getting a lot of email or you're getting communication with people, that I would rather have them give us suggestions than try to have them formulate maps that we then have to include. And because, like's been said here before, we're going to have 8 million maps, and we want their input. I want to stress, we absolutely want the public's input, but we have to keep in mind that our staff is limited resources and limited amount of time. We have a time frame that we have to get this done in. So what are you thinking?
Madam Chairwoman, I wasn't trying to imply that any member of the public is going to be submitting maps for this dashboard. I was more saying if this is what we're looking at, and as we adapt it and evolve it through each week's meetings, it doesn't hurt us, and it only is a benefit if members of the public can view it. And then if they see something, even if it's just one resident who lives somewhere and flags something like the Riverside issues with the county, the county process, I think that's worthwhile. I think that could be beneficial.
Sure.
So from what I was gathering from text, I think he's on the same page as me, where all the maps that we have viewed before we start getting rid of these, leave it open to the public to make a comment, even if it's not something
Absolutely.
necessarily that we're already thinking of.
Yes.
But I do think that I agree that we should put a limit, or at least, if we're going to submit any more maps, it needs to be done by next week, or, we need to kind of wrap this up, because there is a time frame.
Yes, I think if I'm correct, what staff is asking for is how long we want to go until we start narrowing it down to a specific amount.
At which point we stop taking more
Right,
maps.
correct,
Yeah,
yes.
That's probably a good idea.
Yes, that was the point I was trying to get to, yes.
I think this is a great discussion. What I would just like to point out is just, at this point, what we can do is, if you'd like, Mike can go through and show you how it collects public input and how it can accept it and how that can be relayed to you. And then that can give you a little bit more, maybe some background that maybe would be helpful as you're discussing when would be the appropriate time to employ this for that input.
Sure.
So Mike, do you want to show how that works?
Okay, so we were actually working on a survey that can add some additional content to this dashboard. Many times they don't want to have to select on this dashboard and then go to a whole other site out here to be able to provide input. So we've actually developed a feedback option that we could actually attach as a panel at the bottom of the dashboard. So within there, users will be able to enter in either their address or zip code, and then put in a valid email address. And then once they've done that, they could select whichever scenario that they would like. So let's say that they would like to select community scenario 4. It'll pop up the map so they can understand and be able to provide comment on that and submit it. And they can submit as many times as they would like, provide as much comment as they like on each of these scenarios. They can keep navigating through these. It'll change the map up for them as well, so they can view this in case they don't have to keep going back and forth between the dashboard map as well as this. So it gives an opportunity for this. So if this is something that you would like, we can definitely include this into the dashboard as a part of it. I think probably we still need to have some review if there's any additional questions that you would like to add in here that would provide more content to the maps and feedback. We can certainly do that.
Other than this dashboard, is there any other ways for people to weigh in? I'm thinking people who don't have access to the internet or to computers.
Sure. One of the most basic opportunities, and it wasn't listed in any of the other PowerPoints, but is really a fundamental one, which is attending the meetings and being able to take advantage of the public comment portions. Of course, we will, any documentation that anyone wants to send in, whether it be a letter or something, we will take that and we'll make copies and distribute that to you as well. So there's a number of the basic options that are available too.
That's great, good to know. I would just like to take a poll of board members here and virtually. Did you see anything that you could suggest to Mike, questions that you'd like to have available for them, or any topics that they'd like to touch on that would be of interest to them with regard to us making this decision? Do you have any thoughts about that for Mike? No?
Definitely add that feedback page that he just showed us. I think that's a good one.
Okay. Do the folks
Scott, on the forum platform, will that automatically, I'm looking at the contributions right now, show us the most recent ones up top as far as filtering? Because I think I'd be more curious to see kind of before every committee meeting what's been the input over the last week, especially as we do refine scenarios.
Okay.
So there's a little button at the top of the contributions area that you can click and select how you want to see them, either most recent or most popular. So if you'd like to see the most recent first, you would just click it and do the drop-down menu, press recent.
Does it?
Thank you.
Sure. Good. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, and I agree with that last comment. I think that was Mr. Dozier. That was exactly where I was going as far as us seeing what's most current, making sure that, or most popular, making sure that we have things that are current in there so we don't get overwhelmed with extraneous data or things that we've already addressed. You can archive it, but, filter it down or have a way to do that so we can stay on task. but I think it's a very good tool to use, and I look forward to seeing what the team does with it.
Good, thank you. All right,
All right, thank you.
thank you. All right, Stephen, census data.
Yeah, this, that's not the right one. Let's see. All right, going over the 2020 census, just wanted to say that in terms of the information we've received so far on this 2020 census, we've received total population, race and ethnicity, voting age population, which we can't consider here, total housing units, vacant and occupied, and group quarters population. The rest of the census data that we're still waiting for and expect to arrive maybe in March of 2023 is renter-owner occupancy data, sex and age data, and household makeup, including family size, household size, types of households, and that sort of thing. Of course, you've seen this map with the existing 2020 census tracts and the existing council districts. The overall population here, we had a total of over 15,000 population increase, or a 4% increase. And I'm going to try to toggle between these two maps. This is the 2010 population data, and this is the 2020. So if you look at these, you can kind of see how the city has grown and gotten a little bit more dense in certain areas. And then the green dots on this map are where new housing has occurred in the last decade. And this PowerPoint is available on the website if you want to look at it or print it out. Greatest number of new homes were built east of Webb Road in City Council District 2, and the second highest number of new homes was in District 5. Wichita saw a small decline in the number of vacant housing units, but the overall percentage of vacant units stayed the same in Wichita. So we maintained a fairly high housing occupancy in Wichita. This is the race data. We saw a 6% change in white non-Hispanic population and a 3% change in the Hispanic Latino population. Hispanic Latino population grew to 18%, and non-Hispanic white population decreased to 59%. Black, Asian, and Native American and other race categories of the population stayed pretty much the same, within tenths of percent change in the decade. But population of two or more races increased from 3% to 6%. So a doubling of those two or more races. So that's basically a brief overview of the data, and I'll stand for any questions.
Anyone have questions for Stephen? If not, thank you.
Okay.
Concept maps review, Scott.
All right, so this is really, I think, the heart of the meeting. And so I'm going to introduce a number of folks as we go through this. We have maps that have been developed by staff. We also have maps that have been developed by commission members and submitted. And so what we will do is we'll go through each of those. For the maps that were developed by staff, we'll provide you with an overview of the analysis in terms of how they turn out on population. We'll be able to zoom in and look at neighborhood associations if you'd like to, also precincts. Then for the ones that were developed by commission members, we can provide a high-level overview of them in terms of how they work with population, and then we can turn it over to the commission member to explain what, their concept behind the map. So I do want to emphasize that this is just an opportunity to view the information. My hope is that either tonight or perhaps at the next meeting, we would have an opportunity for you all to kind of vote in terms of to identify which ones you like the most, so that we can kind of get a prioritized list of which ones seem to be headed in the right direction. But again, this is just an opportunity tonight for right now at least to go through the maps and better understand kind of how they play out in terms of data. So with that, the first person that I'll turn it over to is Mike, and he's going to take us through 1 and 2 scenarios. Okay.
All right, so I'll be demoing staff scenario 1. Staff scenario 1 only had 3 election districts that were impacted by this. And it's down here in the southeast portion of town. It was 205, 235, and 248. The only area that was impacted by this was the East Ridge Neighborhood Association, which is right here. So it will be split between 2 and 3 if this particular scenario is approved. There are no actually, I don't believe there's any homeowner associations in this particular area. There is not. So of these areas, only one neighborhood association is impacted.
Mike, can you provide an overview of the population totals?
Yes, I'll do that. So in the case of the population totals, all of them, the highest amount of percentage variation was 1.3%. That was for District 5. Everything else is below that and all within the 5% ratio, plus or minus. Is there any questions on this particular scenario?
Anyone?
I apologize, there's one other district. I missed it. There's one up here. It was actually election district 216 was needed to be added. So it moved actually from District 2 into District 1. There is no neighborhood associations with that, but there is quite a few homeowners associations, such as Waterford, Sycamore Village, as well as Applewood Garden Homes.
Tell me one more time, moves 216 from District 2 into?
District 1,
Thank you.
yes.
And what was the East Ridge precinct that split?
That is 205, 235, and 248. Is there any further questions on 1?
Yes.
All right. Staff scenario 2 was more of a geographic based, cleaned up some of the boundaries. So in the case of District 3, the northern boundary is all Kellogg now, as well as the eastern boundary is Woodlawn in that regard. And additionally, up in the northern part, 29th Street is the cutoff point between District 2 and District 1. We have case of 129. Where's 129? In the southern part, right by the Kellogg area, there's 129, 130, and 101. Those areas actually have quite a few neighborhood associations in the area, including Linwood, Schweider East, and Sunnyside.
Are any of those split, or are they all kept together but just
No, they're all
switched?
kept together.
Okay.
They're all going to be now moving from, they were in District 1 and now they are in District 3. Except for, yeah, Linwood is too. Yep.
But it's not juggling.
Additionally, there is no homeowner association in that area.
Okay. It's not juggling population as much as it's just cleaning up boundaries?
That's another thing. In the case of the population, there is a variance, and that is down in District 3. It does have a 4.29%, which is getting up close to there, but the growth potential for these particular areas is not very high. So there is potential it'll be fine for many years to come on that. The rest of them, there is District 1 has a negative 3.44%. So it has potential for growth on that, as well as, since it's up, it has the area in the northeast portion, so there's plenty of growth potential up north of 29th Street.
Mike, you want to cover those that would move to 1?
Yeah, I'm still getting there. So, all right. So in the case of the northern part of it, there is no neighborhood associations that's impacted, but there's quite a lot of homeowners association, including Willow Bend. So all of these neighborhood associations up here would move from District 2 into District 1.
Those are all HOAs, right?
These are all HOAs, yes, that's correct. Is there any questions on this particular scenario? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Banks, and he'll continue.
Okay, I'm going to talk about scenarios 3, 4, and 5. And in scenario 3, I pulled this precinct in here, which is 207, and a couple of smaller precincts down in here. The problem with this scenario is that it does split the same Evergreen, was it Evergreen Neighborhood Association? If this one here, it does split that in half. East Ridge, okay. So it does split that, and so trying to think of what is a way to still increase District 3 in population without doing that. And to do that, I went with another scenario number 4. Took a little bit different tack and tried to find a southern boundary for District 2 and bring in more precincts. Now, I also did a trade-off with these 2 precincts. That's number 331 and 306 going into District 1. And that actually does a couple of good things. One, it brings District 1's population up and gets it 3.87% over the average number, which is pretty good because that is not as much of a growth area. It also brings District 2 down by a little over 4%, but it brings District 3 very close to the target number. Looking at these, we do have these industrial improvement districts in the way, and so like we have done with the city of Mays and some other areas going across jurisdictions to try to pull things in, we're basically just trying to use the roads in this case to say, let's create a southern boundary for District 2. And what that does, okay, this is a closer end. What that does is give quite a bit more growth potential for District 3. Again, we swapped some with District 1 here, and those were basically the only changes in this part of the map. There is one other thing that I looked at, and that is up in District 6. There's this one little precinct with 0 population, number 511. It's on the east side of Hoover. And my thinking there was that if we pull that in and use Hoover as a dividing line between 5 and 6 up there and allow some of this growth area to be a part of District 6's potential. And we are going to put these growth areas in the dashboard that you can use too, so that you can look at and play with that. The fifth scenario takes a little bit different approach, and we went ahead and brought District 3 over into Precinct 425, which is currently in District 4. We did a little swap just to the north here with Precincts 336 and 325 going into 4. But in order to try to keep the numbers a little more even, we also brought in the northern part of Delano, which does kind of get that into one district, except for a small portion. And then another precinct, number 504, into District 4. We also went east for District 1, bringing in the Willow Bend and these other homeowners associations up here. And I believe that was basically it. Again, you have the numbers on the maps we've provided to you, if you got any questions. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Commission, are we up to commission procedures?
Where did the dashboard go?
Okay, sorry. Forgive me, forgive me.
Hello, I'm Dan Kramer. I teach EIS, and I worked on staff scenarios 6 and 7. So I'll explain those briefly. Let's get up here a little bit. So with 6, my main thought process was purely population, just trying to keep the numbers as tight as possible, playing around as tight as possible, giving and taking different districts, different precincts, and still maintaining some geographic boundaries in some sense. The biggest changes, the ones that stand out the most, and the one that stands out to me after doing this is right here. That will probably be changed, I bet. We'll move that one probably around. Still maintain Willow Bend, preserving that to District 2 as much as possible. As some of the other scenarios showed, we're where it takes some of these Waterford, Sycamore, Applewood, and that into District 1. Turn these off again. Eastridge is getting hit pretty hard, right? Everyone seems to be moving that one around. We're going to split that one up. So it's just playing, what can you give, what can you take, and then we can further discuss how much we can give and how much we can take. Same with down here, some of these south central, south areas. going between 3 and 4, just kind of flipping them around, just seeing if it makes sense. So those were the bigger changes. Any questions on staff scenario 6?
Anyone?
Okay, and then staff scenario 7. Again, the concept on here was population. The numbers make sense. They're pretty tight on the deviation here. As you can see, it's pretty good. There is just, I mean, it looks visually pretty good, I think. There's one small issue right here, but we can fix that. There is 0 population here in McAdams. So we'll, small oversight, but that can be fixed pretty quickly. It does kind of change the northeast part over here. So it is something to take into consideration. It's also Delano, same with staff scenario 6 and 7. Delano is still in 4, or is moved to 4, and that may be a further point of discussion. That's anything else on 6 or 7? Okay, thank you.
While the maps were being reviewed, a question did come in on Teams, on the Teams chat, and that was a question about whether the district, and this is from Janet Johnson, about whether the districts need to be contiguous with themselves. And so, Steve, I don't know if you want to address that, or Sharon?
Yeah, there are actually a number of situations where we lose being contiguous, island annexations and so forth, and we have to decide which district it's going to be once it is part of Wichita. One of those was the water treatment plant out northwest, the bomb range down far at southwest Sedgwick County. There's actually no population there. We don't want population there for a good reason, but it's happened in other areas. Even in District 2 right now, we have this little island that is down Rock Road across from McConnell. And it does occur. So being totally contiguous, the word that the Ordinance 173 uses is compact. So if we had a district that straddled Kellogg from East Wichita city limit to West City Wichita limit, you might not say that's very compact. You just kind of need to decide when you have these geographies, and going back to the map I put up with the industrial improvement districts, they create a gap for us that, you know, and if for instance, Eisenhower were not inside the city limits for some reason, we'd have a similar situation on the west side. So these are factors that, you know, we have to assign a district to it. What's the boundary going to be? And if you state, okay, we're going to use Harry or Pawnee as the dividing line, then that's the way it would be handled.
Okay. Does that make sense to everyone?
All right, and those are the staff scenarios. So now we move into the ones that were developed by members of the commission. And so for those, what I'm going to ask Mike to do is come up and provide an overview in terms of how they turned out in terms of population, also in terms of precincts that moved. But then we'll turn it over to the commission member who submitted it to talk about some of the rationale behind it. And yeah, we'll just take it from there. Sound like a good process? Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
So under the committee scenarios, committee scenario 1 we did not perform any analysis beyond the population on that, and Commissioner submitted, requested it to be removed.
Okay.
Any
I guess I would just point out though, I think what it shows is just the challenge sometimes is inherent in the process, and that they don't always work out in terms of population, but, you know, thank you for submitting it, and I think it's informative.
Each of these scenarios are a work in progress, so we could certainly add and remove and improve upon any of them, and move populations around if we have to just move a district here, but district there to make it more usable and possibly selectable for the committee. So in the case of committee scenario 2, there were 4 election districts that were impacted by this. Out here on the southern part, there was election district 101, which moved from 1 to 3. Now that does split some neighborhood associations. Actually, it does not. It actually moves Linwood, Schweider, and Schweider East from 1 into 3. So they're now in 3. But one area that does split the neighborhood associations is actually when 331, election district 331, moved from district 3 into 1. We actually have a couple of neighborhood associations that are now represented by 2 council members. So Longview and Fairfax both got split in this area. In the case of 213 and 212, they moved from District 2 into District 1. Now, there are no neighborhood associations impacted by this, but there are homeowner associations that are. So we also have Charmont, Patio Homes, Rockwood, Hartmore Estates, Polo, as well as Fairfield Estates and the Abbey.
Are we still on scenario 2 or are we on 3?
This is committee scenario 2.
Okay, thank you.
So now I'd like opportunity for the committee member to provide comment, if you wish.
So this map, in terms of logistics and geographically, in terms of minimum movement, you take in District 1 a little bit east, and then in terms of where where 101 was moved into 3, there's that district was already heavily surrounded or right there on the cusp of District 3. So in terms of it just making a natural alignment and getting the numbers in terms of the population, again, with minimal movement. Now, we didn't have access to these tools when these maps were created. So the neighborhood association, or was it the homeowners associations that were split? Okay, so that'll be something to look into and to take into consideration as we move forward. And I also believe that in this particular scenario, there should have been movement. Okay, maybe that didn't move on this particular map. But anyway, that was the genesis in the scenario by that. It just, in terms of logistics and geographics, taking District 1 a little bit east, conceding some parts of District 1 to District 3 that's already kind of embedded in the south. You don't have a tremendous amount of movement and shakeup within the redistricting process.
Make comment on the population. The population's really tight, so everything's under 1% in plus or minus in both directions. Any comments on committee scenario 2?
I've got a question about that. If I understand a homeowners association and their purpose and a neighborhood association and their purpose are really dramatically 2 different things. Neighborhood association is a group of people that have come together that recognize themselves as being part of this community. HOA is basically to make sure everybody in that housing district is complying with a set of covenants or regulations, whatever. So I don't think if we split up an HOA, I'm not as worried about that as if we're splitting up a neighborhood association. I could see them being kind of, no, we don't want that. So I appreciate you bringing that up and pointing that out. So
Completely agree.
okay, good.
Well, Madam Chair, and certainly to follow and echo that point too, I think that in terms of even moving an HOA out of one particular thing, I think that would be an important process to reach out to those folks and to get that engagement and just to have that feedback in terms of going to another district and how they would take that purview too.
Give them
So
that awareness, but that doesn't necessarily have to influence whether we do it or not.
absolutely.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you. Any other input, guys? Okay, thank you. What's
Item.
next?
Committee scenario 3 is a less is more concept. There's only one district that's impacted by, or one election district that's impacted by this. The numbers all look good. 3 is the highest at 2.52%, and 1 is the lowest at negative 2.92%. Particular election district, it does impact some homeowner associations, but the one key is the East Ridge Neighborhood Association. That is now split and represented by both 3 and 2. In the case of the homeowner associations, there's only a few, Pebblebrook and Cedar Lakes landowners. So give the opportunity for the commission to comment.
So again, this is just one of those ones that there's not a big shakeup in terms of the redistricting process. My personal view in terms of looking at that is getting the numbers in terms of the tolerance in which we are charged to do. And certainly, and I will say just, I believe that any type of heavy movement should certainly require robust communication with the community at a much extended period of time in terms of if you're going to shift and really change things around, because I think that there should be robust community feedback and robust economic studies to look at that. So the 2 maps that I did submit were based upon making sure that the numbers were within the tolerance the way that they needed to be, and that there was not an aggressive amount of movement to where it was really going to shake up people's lives without having the proper time to do those type of scenarios and assessments. So thank you.
Any comment on any additional questions?
So, thank you for putting this together.
All right, and then we have 2 additional scenarios that were submitted. These ones were submitted after you had talked about the deadline, but I think at the last meeting there had been discussion about, well, what if someone submits? So we went ahead and we performed the analysis on them, but we want to double check with you before we go through that to make sure that you want to see them as a group. So are you, I'm seeing heads nod.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, very good. So Mike, you want to do that?
Can we get printouts of these?
Yes, good question there.
Thank you.
Wait for the maps to be handed out.
Oh, I got 2. Okay, sorry, thanks. I wasn't sure if they were different.
All right, so committee scenario 4, there's quite a few changes in this particular area. 1, Delano got moved from District 4 into District 6. That is District 6. So all of Delano, that particular election district, which is 405, got moved to the north, which the Delano Neighborhood Association would be all in one district at that point. In the southern portion of it, 301, 320, and 405 were modified and moved. So 320 was moved from District 3 into District 1. And that one should have impacted, yeah, and actually that's included with the South Central Neighborhood Association. Hold up a second. So we had 320, we had 301 that moved from 3 over to District 4. And those particular ones impacted the South Central Neighborhood Association as well as the South Central Improvement Alliance. Instead of previously, those particular neighborhood associations were in District 3. Now they are actually represented by 3 different council members. So they will be in both District 3, District 1, as well as District 4.
That was 320, 301, and what was the third?
Yeah, it's 301, 320 are the two that
It's just the
actually
two,
impacted it the most.
Thank you.
All right, to the southeast area, this is a common theme in case of 207, moving from Council District 2 into Council District 3. That will split East Ridge to the north here. So East Ridge would have two representation, both 3 and 2.
Which is the other half of that one? Is it 209?
On the lower portion of it, there's actually 208, 209, and I believe it's 246, 245.
Okay, so 207 is the.
Oh, no, 209 is not. It's 208, 233, as well as 245 and 246.
Okay, so it's just 207.
So those are all moved to 3.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe the other changes are actually out in the northwest portion of it. So in the case of 621, that one only impacts Edgewater Neighborhood Association or Homeowners Association, as well as the southern portion of 603, which impacts multiple homeowner associations as well. They all be moving into a different district. So Barefoot, Crystal Waters, Muir Ridge, and Landing Lake.
So Mike, just to be clear, none of them are split
No,
into 2 districts, but
they'll just have different representation going forward. So I believe that is all of the changes. Allow for the committee member to make
Just a
comment.
few.
Yes, sir.
So my goal with this one was geographic and communities of interest. Until they pointed out the issue with that neighborhood association in 301, so I gotta tweak that. The Delano one was brought to me from an email from someone who lived there, and it pointed out to me that Delano has been split with representation in half. And so, yeah, because half of Delano is south and half of Delano is north. So my problem that I had was somehow moving 3,000 people into 6, which was not easy, which is why I did that bit up in the northwest. So that's why I moved Delano into 6, so that the Delano Neighborhood Association could have 1 representation instead of 2. I'm gonna try and fix the issue with 301 and see what I can do there. And I'll try and do the same with the same thing that everybody else has had at 207. I don't know what we're gonna do there. That's a toughie. I don't know what we do there. But I'll run the numbers, see what I can do.
And speaking of the numbers all are within the tolerance of the 5%. plus
Yeah,
or minus.
that's the one area, the only one that I had significant growth in was 2. That was a significant deviation, but that's okay because 2 is our largest population growth area, so it's okay to have a deviation there.
If you do look at the numbers, 3.34% for District 5. So they have a small little area of growth that's available to them, but 2 is at negative 4.2%, so it has a lot of space to go. As well as 6 is at 3.44% on the positive side. Is there any questions on committee scenario 4? Okay. All right, yeah.
And I will describe a brief overview of committee scenario 5. You can see it's a little different than some of the other ones. Main differences between 1 and 2, taking a lot, from 1, putting it in 2. The numbers are within tolerance, but they're getting tight, especially on District 1. We are negative 4.83%, which is pretty close, and then also giving 2 positive growth of 3.25. That's something to take into consideration. Losing about 3,200 in 1, gaining 2,100 in 2. Overall, as you can see, the numbers are still there, but getting close. Some other highlights of this scenario are Delano is all in 4. And then some other changes here with College Hill in 2. It said the whole northeast part has changed quite a bit, and also between 5 and 6. So the numbers work, but I can let the committee member go into more detail.
So seeing the numbers, I do think there's some adjustments that would need to be made, especially to District 1, to bring the population up a little bit. My main goal on this was to get the districts as tight as possible while also, paying attention to communities of interest and geographic. So Kellogg, for the most part, is kind of a straight shot through as to what's north and what's south. I took College Hill and put it in District 2. The other big change, like John's, was Delano. I think Delano making it all in one district was important. And then also I thought making District 6 a little tighter, taking off the northern and western edges, and combining that with more communities of interest in District 5. Any questions?
All right. So how many scenarios total do we have? 12. So okay, with one removed, so almost a dozen. So the question at this point is, we've heard some comments about tweaks and some edits to some of them, and so I see a couple of options, and I just want to check in with you and see which one you prefer. One option is to do a sticky dot or a kind of voting exercise, and we can do it with the remote participants as well, and see which ones are kind of shaking out as most favorable amongst the group, and then the edits and revisions could be done to those. Or you've got another option, I guess, which is to do edits and revisions and then come back at the next meeting and discuss those changes and talk about those, and then then see if you're interested in doing, again, some kind of exercise, like a sticky dot exercise or voting exercise, to see which ones kind of shake out then as most preferred in general by the group.
I think after our discussion earlier, I think that's the more preferred method, just because it gives opportunities to adjust slightly. Also gives opportunities to make this public, where we can get some feedback before we start taking maps away.
I agree.
Okay, do you need a motion to
I was going to say,
that?
do you want a motion?
Do we need a motion?
General consensus tends to work unless there's someone who doesn't agree with it, but a motion certainly just solidifies it and represents that that definitely was a consensus or what the majority felt was best.
If we did a motion, should we also set a deadline for any additional maps, like for next Wednesday, so we're not getting more and more maps keep getting added to this?
Do you feel like every committee member has gotten an opportunity to submit a map if they want to?
We've not seen any others come in besides the ones that were discussed today.
Okay.
You'll notice when you're talking about deadlines that Mike starts to come up closer to the podium, and so
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you.
No, I think what we would highlight is just that emphasize that Monday is if someone wants to submit something end of Monday.
So, are you ready for a motion?
Yes.
Before I was just asking, Madam Chairwoman, if I heard a second. I didn't know could you reiterate what had been motioned and seconded?
I believe Javen is going to make a motion and John is going to second, but please state your motion.
Yes. So I will make a motion that we set the deadline for additional maps for next Monday, which is August the 1st. And then we will set up, I guess, public comment between now and then to start viewing the maps.
Second.
Did the online person understand that? Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay, so we had a
Yes.
motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Oh,
Aye. Oh,
Any opposed?
No.
You're opposed? Okay.
Were we going to get an opportunity to debate?
I'm sorry, yes. Let's open the floor for debate for the motion and second. Do you have
Yeah,
comments?
were we getting an opportunity to discuss? I'm sorry, what was the final ruling on that?
Well, yes, because I'm not sure, it's so hard to tell, forgive me, please. It's so hard to tell the people that are doing this virtually, it's hard to tell what their votes are. So, please forgive me. So, have you voted? Did you cast a vote?
If you're asking me, I voted no, and I was asking, is there going to be an opportunity to discuss this before a vote was taken? Because I would have actually made a motion, a substitute motion to that.
Okay, then, what's parliamentary procedure? Sharon?
Substitute motion takes precedence.
Okay, thank you.
But did you already vote on the first motion?
Well, we had a 3-2.
Yeah,
3 to 2, I think. But 2 people
Yes.
haven't voted yet.
I did vote, but I was open to making a substitute motion, and I'm just inquiring where it stands on the vote. I couldn't tell.
Okay,
3 to 2, you had 2 people that didn't vote, right?
I believe Janet didn't
Okay.
vote and Mr. Penn didn't
So
vote.
it's not any, so technically you probably already.
So what is
voted. If you want to go ahead and entertain the substitute motion, I think you can, since everybody has not voted.
Sharon, if you want to turn your microphone on, but it sounds like Sharon has provided an opinion that the substitute motion, based on how the vote went, the procedure of the vote, that the substitute motion can be entertained at this time.
It doesn't appear that everybody voted on that last motion, or at least if the vote was 3 to 2, as the chair has tallied it, not everybody voted. So I'm going to take the position that you can at least discuss a substitute motion, and then go back and at that point, everybody will vote.
Yes. And Mr. Dozier, correct? Did you want to make a
Thank you,
substitute motion?
Chairwoman.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. My substitute motion would be to strike the deadline for final map submission being for next meeting. I believe it is important as a part of this process, as we have continual discussion and dialogue and input from the community, that we may, there may be an additional map, or commission members may come to a different realization from their own previous submissions to retweak it in such a substantial way that it may be a different scenario ultimately for staff to draw up. And as that conversation evolves, I don't think we should limit ourselves to that time frame of one more week, especially since we're coming back next week to have initial tweaks and discussions around these scenarios that we just went into. So I would request that we would not put some hard deadline for a commission member to submit new maps for this commission to consider. And because if there is support for that potential scenario, then there will be support for that scenario. And if there's not, there's not. And I think as we get further in the process, nobody's going to tweak their proposed scenarios or put forward a proposed scenario without it being informed from the discussion that's been occurring and where the general consensus is with the commission.
That's reasonable. I'll second that.
So you understood that? I'm sorry, I'm lost.
He's
What-
striking the hard deadline of the first submission. And
Okay.
that's reasonable. I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been motioned to strike the deadline and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Are you
I
agreeing?
oppose.
You're opposed?
Penn votes aye.
Okay. Do we have Mr. Penn and,
He voted aye. Penn voted aye.
okay,
Okay, Janet said aye.
okay, good. I'm glad you can keep track of this.
Madam Chair?
It's really hard virtually,
If,
so
if it would be helpful, we could do a roll call and just see how people vote on the motion, if that'd be
help me
helpful.
tremendously, yes.
So, Whitmer,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Did she say aye?
Janet Johnson.
Did she say aye?
Oh, I'm gonna check the chat.
Typed
She
in
says aye.
Okay.
Gregory,
Aye.
Anderson,
Nay.
Penn,
Nay.
and Dozier.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 affirmative, 2 opposed.
All right, then I believe motion carries. Do we have any further discussion, or are we moving on to next item? Yes?
Next item.
Okay. I asked for this to be put on the agenda for you, Mr. Dozier, because you had brought up at our last meeting, I'm sorry, not the meeting before last, that you had some procedural recommendations, I guess, and do you want to visit about that now? Do you want to explain that to the rest of the committee?
Yes, ma'am. I had mentioned before that, you know, before we get into further deliberations and votes and culling of maps and scenarios, that it might be helpful. And I also am bringing this amicably to get input from the commission if we adopted rules. Because I think already in the last meeting and even in this meeting, trying to understand what's the procedure of things. And it was very helpful with the county redistricting process that there were rules put in place at the second meeting before we got into much deliberation. And so I had sent using those rules as the template from the county redistricting commission, sent a rework of them over to Stephen and Scott that did update a few things, like we're able to participate virtually and vote virtually, and as well as accommodate more for the smaller size of this commission. So I did send those to them if the commission would think that would be beneficial. Most of the stuff we know already, but it does give us that template to go back to in a situation like this on, you know, just so everyone's on the same page of what's ending debate and how do you do a substitute motion. All that's been copied from the county commission redistricting, basically Robert's Rules of Order. And so if I don't know if Scott, Stephen, if you all had printed those out for this meeting for the commissioners to review, it was something I was putting forward in the hopes that it could provide a framework for better discussion and debate as we continue this process.
So we don't have it printed, and I apologize for that, but we do have it in the digital format shared on the screen.
Okay. Do you want to take a couple of minutes and read through it? And I'm not sure, I mean, I'm kind of going by Robert's rules, and I think it's just a tweak of Robert's rules, so I don't know if you guys want to glance.
They emailed it, I read it, didn't they email it to us, I thought?
I haven't got a chance to read it yet. I personally, I'm not opposed to putting these rules in. I haven't read them yet. But I think if we were, I think it'd be appropriate to maybe do this at the beginning of our next meeting, just so we all have a chance to read them and make sure. I'm not going to commit to something I haven't read. I would never sign a contract that I haven't read. So, yeah.
Did you receive a copy of it?
Yeah, I apologize. I get that. I had wrongly assumed and didn't follow up that individual copies would be available for each commissioner to have, because they're not like a long set of rules, but if you had a copy to review before the meeting, during the meeting, and in advance of the meeting, that could be beneficial. So I understand that. If you want to take a moment to review them, I'm flexible with that as well. Whatever's best.
Madam Chair,
I respect y'all wanting to do.
Who said Madam Chair? I don't know.
Patrick.
This is Pat.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, how are you doing? Thank you so much for entertaining my comment. I've had an opportunity to read these as they've been on the screen. They're not egregious. They are pretty much a recap of what we decided upon in the first meeting, just basically codifying that. And because of that, I move that we go ahead and accept and adopt these rules into our committee rules draft, this draft set of rules, so that we can do business in an organized fashion. Thank you.
So he has made a motion to accept these rules.
Can I make a substitute motion to that?
I'll,
We have to see if he gets a second. Are you okay with them?
Have you read them?
I think I certainly understand Mr. Gonzalez's concern, and I think that if the committee member wants to take the additional time to examine what it is will be the bonding or an official documentation standpoint. I think that the committee member is well within his rights to request a delay and vote for next week. So I support your where you stand with that.
Me too, I'm fine.
Can we do that with a friendly amendment? Yes?
Can we get a written copy of them or email them out and then we'll vote on it next week? I'm fine with that.
Who, was it Mr. Dozier's original motion?
It was Patrick with the.
It was Patrick's motion. Are you agreeable to that friendly amendment, Patrick?
Well, if it is the will of the body that they take another week to look over what we've already discussed, then I withdraw my motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll table it until next time and vote on it next time when everybody's had an opportunity to read it. Is that all right? Very good.
And I apologize. There was no intention of trying to throw something out there for a quick vote. I at the very least wouldn't have wanted the vote, would have preferred the vote to happen with y'all having printed copies. And if I had seconded Representative Penn's motion, I would have at the very least would wanted the commission to take time to see just the 3 pages scrolled down.
Sure.
As you can see, it won't take too long to review it. So yeah, I totally understand that, but I'd also be open if y'all are fine to address it now, or if you wanted to read them later. I just would not want to second that motion without it, y'all having the opportunity to read all 3 pages.
I believe the motion has been withdrawn, so we're going to go ahead and table it until next time, and it will be voted on. If we can, did you have a comment, Scott?
I do. Janet Johnson has commented in the comments section of the Teams meeting that she has suggested that this could be placed at the beginning of the next agenda.
That's what I was,
Perfect.
yes.
Great idea.
Thank you. Yes, that was going to be my suggestion. So thank you, Janet.
There you go.
All right, do we have any other business?
Great.
We need to discuss public comments. Are we going to have a section of the meeting agenda for public comments, or what is the thought of the board? The thoughts of the board?
If you want to open it,
I think at each meeting we should allow opportunity for the public, for those, especially those who don't have access to internet or computers. It's at least an opportunity for them to know what's going on. I mean, I think the majority of people will probably use the online forums, but I think it's important to have that option on there.
Great.
I
Okay.
think you should set some boundaries, maybe limit them to
Absolutely.
2 minutes or something like that.
Yes, because we've both had experience where you get somebody that just wants to tell a story, and
yeah.
so we need to set a parameter of time limits that's within reason, but make that open to anyone that wants to speak, with the knowledge that we might have to cut them off if they
Lamont
exceed
can
the.
handle that.
You're our bouncer. All right, is that agreeable for everyone? Yes? That we will include a public comment section on our future agendas? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And Mike has reminded me that we do have the question about whether or not to post the dashboard with the opportunity for public comment on there. Now that you've seen the different scenarios, you can make a decision that you do want that, and if you indicate that, then we'll get that posted. Or if you would like some more time to consider it, it's something you can also consider at the next meeting as well. So,
Okay.
we've got options.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the more opportunity we have for people to let us know what they think is a good thing. Are you guys kind of in consensus? Yes?
Okay.
Great.
So,
I'm just stating for the record, I understand that premise, and I understand the premise of transparency. But again, I think that if all of these maps that are going up there today, they're going to be tweaked, and the public is commenting on maps that may be completely different from next week, and it may, again, I just think that in terms of utilizing the resources and public engagement and having the public an opportunity to be dialed in, I just want to state for the record, no, it's not a consensus, and there's not any cloak of non-transparency, but I just believe that we should be giving the public actual, tangible pieces of what we are actually going to be placing and put forth. So, like I said, if we put all these maps today, how many of these maps are going to significantly change within a week, and the public has spent a week commenting on something that may be drastically different from next week. So that's my opinion and
It's actually
position.
not a bad point. I mean, we already threw out one map today,
Mm-hmm.
and that might have gotten all people up in arms and.
I guess my comment on that is the tweaks and adjustments that we might make to some of these. Oh, my mic is working. The tweaks and adjustments that we might make to some of these might be due to the public comment that comes
Right,
in.
right.
So personally, I would say that I would like to have public comments as soon as possible.
I think the text, the forum submission comment is probably, for me, going to be really important, because then that gives me real time, as well as something we can see week to week. I was wondering if, relevant to this discussion, if staff could respond on 2 points with this. One, where that comment platform is hyperlinked on the redistricting page, it's kind of middle of the page, and it's under a section called questions. I was wondering if it could be more prominent, higher up on the page, as well as kind of a call to action for folks to understand that this is more than just an opportunity to ask questions, but the opportunity for them to weigh in on current maps they're considering or priorities they would like to see considered. And then is also a part of that forum platform, if there's any way to add a field so that the individual can denote their current city council district. That was really helpful on the county level, where we were able to see patterns between commission constituents in certain commission districts, all kind of commenting or there being a pattern around that. So I think that could be really beneficial, even more so in some ways than having the public comment period during the meeting.
So
Go ahead.
I think in staff response, I'm going to look to Naomi for some help on this one. So I think the first question was whether or not the forum link could be made more prominent on the redistricting webpage. Right now, it's in the lower kind of middle portion of the page. Naomi, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can definitely make it more visible. Also, Forum is a registration-based platform, which is one of the ways that we keep it civil. But when you register for Forum, you can designate which district you belong to, so that is information that can be captured. Or people can self-identify when they comment as well. Is there any?
Yeah, I understand that. I just didn't know if there's any feeling of fellow commissioners that, especially since there's that registration barrier, we got a lot of feedback at the county level with what was essentially, from what I remember, like a Google form that then just had a field for the district as well. I didn't know if there was any concern or interest in, and then it was easy for us to see it all in one spreadsheet, very quickly to sort by timestamp, as well as to sort by district. I don't know if that would be of any interest to commissioners, or if you just want to keep it as is and just make it a little more prominent.
Anyone have thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think that the GIS form would also be, would capture that type of information, but I can definitely look into that. And I can also talk to my cohorts at the county and see what they used.
If I could.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about what we can do is, Naomi, if you're willing to look into that and talk with the folks over at the county, what we can do is perhaps at the next meeting we can present on what some options are, and then you can tell us whether or not you'd like to have those employed.
Or we can just work on visibility.
And we can work on the visibility of the forum. Okay. I think the one outstanding question that is still amongst is whether or not to publish the dashboard to receive public comments through that on the maps, the 11 maps currently in the system.
Mm-hmm. What's the consensus?
Madam Chair, if I may, I think that in the order of what we're doing business, I think that the simple way would be just to put it to a vote, have a motion, and it'll fall where it may at that particular stage.
Okay, Do you have a motion
Respectfully.
to make?
I will make the well, so I will make the, Jamin, you wanna? Absolutely, and I'll second, yes, feel free, I'll second.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and add the online form for people to make comment, and also add to the agenda that we have public comments for the next, for all future meetings, I guess.
Okay, very good.
Staff, a question just of interpretation. So by public comment online, you are including the GIS dashboard survey form that Mike displayed earlier?
Yes, the survey form and also comment here at the meetings.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair, can we separate those and make those two separate? Because the public comment is awesome, people showing up here is awesome, but it just in terms of making the availability of the fluctuating maps to the GIS to the public, that is my no vote there.
I'll amend my motion, and for the first motion, I'll just make a motion that we add the form and the public survey on the maps.
On the dashboard? Okay.
Is that agreeable to you?
Yes, and we're talking about making the GIS information available to the public right now.
Yes.
Okay, is that?
Well, at the end of public comment.
Yes, right?
That was my motion, and then the next one will be for public comment here in person. Is that what you're?
Well,
I misunderstood you.
no, you're fine. So the public can go on the dash on the section now, and they can comment. And so I'm not talking about shutting that down. The only thing that I'm talking about is granting access to the GIS to where the public can go in and look at the maps, and then that conversation over those 11 maps that we currently have, those conversations begin to take shape. I'm just of the opinion right now, like I said, with the fluctuating maps, I don't think that this is the proper time to present those to the public. So in terms of public comment and everything like that, I think that should be, that's on its own standalone, but in terms of the GIS and the public and the maps, that's a separate entity for me. So I in terms of the maps going forward and public comment on fluctuating maps, no. All public comment, whether they're going to the city site or whether they're coming here, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, I think I understand. So I'll withdraw my previous motion, and I'll make a motion that we have the maps available for the public to view online.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
So one nay
Who seconded
vote.
that motion?
I did.
Lamont.
So you seconded it and then you voted nay? No?
Yes.
No, think procedurally you can do that.
I can procedurally do that.
If you second the motion, you're not able to vote no, generally speaking, for me. And again, we're gonna vote on rules next week, but,
No, okay, and that's fine. I was just seconding to
Just
further
get it
the
going.
conversation to get to the vote, but if that is in terms
So-
of procedure.
I think procedure, you can't second the motion and then vote against the motion.
Is there anybody else that want to second it, I guess?
Marcy, you voted yes, go ahead and second.
I'll second your motion,
Okay,
yes.
then we're fine.
Okay.
And I know we're gonna talk
How
procedure
did,
next week,
how did
but
those two vote?
Do we know how Patrick and Janet voted?
How about, if you like, would you like to do a roll call?
That's helpful for me. I apologize for everybody else
We-
that gets it that I don't.
We will, I'll tell you what, as staff, we will help you out. Next time, we will print out roll call sheets so that you can keep track of it a little bit
Fabulous.
easier. Okay, so this is on the motion to publish the maps available for the public to see online. Now, a clarification question is, this is only so that the public can see the maps. This is not to do with the dashboard and public comments received through the dashboard. Is that
I
correct?
intend to make another motion after this.
Okay, that would cover that. So this is just a motion about to make the maps available so that the public can see those. And so, Whitmer,
Oh, you guys are making this much more complicated than it needs to be. No.
okay. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Johnson, Janet Johnson? And she says aye in the comments. Gregory,
Is an aye.
Anderson,
Nay.
Penn? Mr. Penn? Mr. Penn, are you there? How do you vote? I guess I will count that as absent.
Say again, over.
Oh, yes, sir. There's a motion on the floor about publishing the maps on the website for the public to view. This does not deal with a forum for collecting the public input for this. And,
I vote aye.
did I hear aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dozier?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, 2 opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you.
So I guess now I'd like to make another motion
Yes.
to allow public comment on those maps on the online forum survey, and then also allow public comment added to the agenda for future meetings.
I'll second that motion.
And
I have a kind of a procedural question on how, if the commission will be able to see those comments that are being done on the GIS platform, similar to how we're able to see the comments on forum.
I'll turn that over to Mike to answer that question.
Unlike the public comment on the webpage or wichita.gov, in the case of comments through the survey for GIS, we'll have to download those and provide those to staff to basically produce and provide to the commission.
I would actually then like to make a substitute motion that would, recommendation of the commission is to have a single organized portal for online feedback, like forum or something similar, for the public to use, and not to have that additional comment section that has to be separated on the GIS platform itself. And then a friendly request, if there's a way to put in that description page, when you go to the portal with the maps and charts, that there's a direct link to the feedback forum right there, so folks can write what they're seeing and thinking right there, and we all commissioners can see it. So again, my motion is not to have the GIS feedback platform, but to have a single organized feedback platform online like forum, which the commissioners are able to see in real time.
I'm going to have to ask staff, is that possible? It is possible, okay. So
Just to clarify, so this would still allow for comments on the GIS, they would just all go to one place, or this no longer allows for comments on the GIS at all?
Yeah, what I'm motioning is essentially have a link to the forum platform or whatever else platform we have on that intro welcome page where you view the maps. So no, there would not be a separate system of kind of clicking and making comments on the GIS platform itself. And in large part, that's just because of the reality of we commissioners cannot see those and utilize those until staff separately downloads them, versus the benefit of a real-time platform like Forum or a Google Form or something else that allows us to see that and prepare in advance for our meetings. So I just think it's also more practical and organizationally sound for the commission to be able to act on such feedback.
Personally, I just shy away from taking away an opportunity, even if it is a little more complicated or a little extra work. You know, I think the more spots that we can have comments for the public to make. I know a lot of, you know, like my grandparents, they're not going to know how to click a link and follow things all the way through. So I'm opposed to that, just because I think having more areas to comment, even if the staff does have to compile it differently, is better.
Madam Chair, if I may. I guess the question to staff is, it with Mr. Dozier's request, is that something that is something that can be accomplished? Is that correct? And is that something that could be done in parallel with the way that the current communication platform is set up, and to eventually what Mr. Dozier is proposing for that platform to eventually overtake what's currently in place, but to still go along the premise of Mr. Gonzalez to currently allow the public comment to be had for a week? Is asking, could all that be done by next week?
In the case of utilizing the current forum and the feedback within that, we can actually embed the city's forum into our dashboard if need be as an additional way to navigate to that particular forum as well, and also provide a link out to the wichita.gov page as well. So everything can still navigate back to the forum that's been created out on wichita.gov. So I see it's definitely possible for us to be able to do that by next week. And I can work with additional staff in the city manager's office to try to get that accomplished. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up, because I wouldn't be opposed if it's embedded on there and it's all in the same place. I just think the more places that we can put public comment, the better.
Yeah, I'm all about more places. It was more if we can have the same feedback platform organizing those responses from the multiple places that are linked to or embedded. And that's why when I hear that there's going to be a separate platform that feedback's going to be separated from, and then if there is feedback on that platform, commissioners will not see it and potentially give it the same priority we would give the feedback we're getting on the forum platform or whatever else. So that's my concern. I think we're on the same page. I think we're more or less on the same page, and I get your concern there, and I think we're trying to accomplish that, but still make it easy for us to review feedback.
And so just to, certainly not speaking for Mr. Dozier, but adding a little bit of context, when we were at the county, when we were able to go off into and look at the maps, all of the public comment was in one central place. So commissioners were able to, or electors were able to go in, and all of the comments were there and concise. So I think that is what Mr. Dozier is directing to, that we are able to, wherever those comments are coming from, that they will be able to be concise and succinct and just in one location. So at every meeting, wherever those comments are coming from, Facebook, Twitter, wherever that's coming from, that is all dumping into one central location point, and we can access all of those comments in one central spot.
Yeah, and in response to that one, this certainly does keep it from going into two different systems. So by doing that, we're focusing it in one. We will still present to you any emails or letters or other formats that come in, but in terms of a dashboard versus forum, this helps to ensure that it's all going into the forum system, so you have one system to look at for the online comments.
I think that would be helpful. Did we have a motion on the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a substitute motion that Mr. Dozier had made, saying to only have one portal and to put the link embedded into the dashboard.
Was it seconded?
I don't believe so, not yet.
Do we, I'll second it if we're okay with that.
Okay. And Scott, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call for me again.
Yes, of course.
It's just too confusing to, know who's weighed in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Before we call the roll, I'm still need some clarity. So, Mr. Dozier, so so we're talking about embedding a link, just one link. I guess I'm needing clarification on.
Sure. Mike, can you perhaps show the dashboard and then show maybe conceptually what you're thinking at this point?
I don't know if I can do that, but I could try to give you some clarity on this, because normally in the case of the dashboard, there's panels here, and within these panels, pardon me?
Share a screen on Teams.
Oh, I apologize. Where is, not that one. I only work in IT. All right.
Screen is good.
All right. Okay, so in the case of the dashboard, right now we have little panels here. Now in the case of the panels, we can embed information in here, we can embed a website, or we can provide a link. It's, in the case of wanting to have one location for the form, that's still can be accomplished, But we just can provide different means and methods to access that same form. So in the case of that, we could provide you a hyperlink that goes out to that form that NAMO has created, or we can also embed that same page within here if need be. Yeah, it's like a widget. So we would have its own panel here, which would provide access to the form here, or we just give a hyperlink out there to the page as well.
So then my question would be to Mr. Dozier, given what staff has just said, is that motion, in your view, is that motion still relevant to accomplish what you want to see, or is what staff has proposed amenable enough to grab the context in which you desire?
That's amenable enough. I think, yeah, it makes sense on the redistricting dashboard to at very least have a hyperlink, if not embedded. I think that's fine, as long as we have a way to get for the voters or for constituents, as long as they get on the page and can easily see where they can comment as they look at the maps. That's our main objective, and it all coming back to a single platform for us to review feedback.
So then I guess my follow-up question would be, do we still have a premise for a vote then? Mr. Dozier, as a professionally asking, are you withdrawing said motion, or does said motion need to move forward?
It sounds like what staff just said would accomplish what my motion requested.
So there is a motion on the floor from Mr. Dozier. Is there a second?
Mr.
Mr. Whitmer?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, aye? Do we need roll call again?
You
Okay.
can do a motion by acclamation.
It's up to you. I'm more than happy to do it. Mr. Whitmer?
Aye.
Gonzalez?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Gregory?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
Penn? Mr. Penn? Mr. Penn, how do you vote, sir? Maybe we'll say absent. Dozier?
Aye.
So that would be 6 out of 7.
Thank you. All right, do we have anything else we need to discuss, friends? If not, our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, August 3rd at 5:30 p.m. here. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
By acclamation.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Let's go. Thank you all very much.